Hey guys, welcome back to the Binger. We all know that Captain America hung up his shield in Endgame. It looks as though Falcon has stepped up to the plate to assume the mantle. But what if we told you there's another character that has striking similarities? The highly anticipated Black Widow movie is about to drop, and it comes with a new face. It's the Red Guardian. But what exactly makes this villain resemble the great Steve Rogers? Let's find out. Stranger Things alum David Harbour has been cast in the role of Alexei Shostakov, a Russian super soldier. Ironically, Season 3 of the hit Netflix series saw Harbour's character battling against the Soviet Union, and now, the actor finds himself playing the poster boy for it. Isn't it funny how times can change? One of the most striking things about Red Guardian is just how much he physically looks like Captain America. For a start, their outfits are pretty much identical. Just one is red and one is blue. Is this a coincidence? Probably not. After all, the character is pulled directly from the comic books and was hailed as Russia's answer to Cap. There's also the use of a star which is placed prominently in the middle of his chest. Does that happen to ring a bell to anyone? Over the course of the MCU, Captain America's suit has evolved, but one thing has always remained. Can you guess what that is? It's the star in the middle of his chest, of course. Similarly, both characters have a helmet of the same shape with cutout eyes. Do they shop at the same store, or are they buddies with the same designers? One of the most compelling things about Steve Rogers is his rags to riches story. He always wanted to serve his country, but because he was small and sickly, he never got the chance to show his full potential. Then a scientist stumbled upon him, and boom! One injection later, and he was turned into an absolute machine with super soldier strength. While Rogers didn't gain notoriety until after he had the serum, his story does sound a lot like Shostakov's. In the comics, Shostakov started out as one of the Soviet Union's best pilots. He was highly favored by leaders and often chosen to perform special tasks. Interestingly, he was also the husband of Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. When things started to heat up with the Cold War, Shostakov was specially selected to become the Russian equivalent of Captain America. He was trained by the KGB in secret, who molded him into a deadly, volatile threat that wasn't to be underestimated. Sure, Cap was made to fly the American flag and do all that was good and holy, but Red Guardian felt like he was doing the same for those he served too. Ah, love. It's a kicker, isn't it? One day you could be walking down the street minding your own beeswax, and the next, you're sacrificing a lifetime of happiness to serve your commanders. But hey, that's life. At least it's life for Captain America and Red Guardian. We all know the story with Cap. He promised Peggy a dance. But by the time he got out of the ice, she was an old woman who could barely remember him. When he retired, he went back in time and lived a wonderful life with her. It was Cap's just reward for saving countless lives by plummeting into the sea. Red Guardian's story is a little different, but still in the same vein. As we already mentioned, he was married to Black Widow, but when the KGB got hold of him, they faked his death. Even Natasha didn't know her husband was still around. After spending time doing devious deeds for his commanders, he accidentally bumps into his wife on a mission, who by this time is an Avenger. He reveals his identity to her, but is mortally wounded in the process as he saves Natasha. It's a truly heartbreaking story which proves that Red Guardian's character is more than just a villain. He has complex levels to him, much like Rogers. If you're going to try and emulate Captain America, then there's one thing you've got to include. No, it's not a jawline that makes grown men weep or that deep and brooding attitude. Although that would probably help. We're talking about his shield. Cap's vibranium toy is often used as defense rather than a weapon, although it is capable of doing some very serious damage. It can withstand a lot of force and, as such, has helped Steve out of some very tricky situations. When the Russians were arming Red Guardian, they set him up with a very similar piece of equipment. Sure, it's not vibranium, but it can still pack a punch. What's more, the disc detaches from his belt and can return to him like a frisbee. It's all down to some very well-placed magnets that help the shield ping straight back to him after he's let loose. You could argue that both characters would be lost without this handy piece of tech. After all, deflecting gunshots or knocking out an opponent would be made all the more difficult without these special circular objects. Before we continue sizing up these foes, be a hero and subscribe to the Binger and turn those notifications on. If you're watching on mobile, you can do this by going into YouTube settings. Now, where were we? It's no secret that Cap likes to be in charge. He often butted heads with Tony Stark over what they thought was the right course of action, but it goes way beyond what we've seen on screen. In the comics, Rogers has been responsible for getting everyone together on multiple occasions. There's the Captain America Corps, the Avengers Unity Division, the Invaders, and more. The list goes on and on. While Red Guardian might prefer to stand alone, he has teamed up with other dastardly entities in the past. He can be part of a gang when he needs to. In fact, he was recruited by Kang the Conqueror for his Legion of the Unliving, which just sounds really impressive, doesn't it? Shostakov also spent some time as Ronin and founded the Dark Ocean Society. Maybe it's something to do with their powerful presence. But these guys just know how to get people on board. As we already touched upon, Red Guardian is to the Soviet Union as Captain America is to, well, life, liberty, and the American way. While they're both great at kicking their enemies out of orbit on behalf of their governments, it goes beyond this. They aren't just weapons, they're symbols. Captain America represents everything that's good, strong, and valued about American culture. He represents an ideal, which is exactly what Red Guardian does for Russia. They're both bold statements, shouting from the rooftops. "This is what you'll get if you come looking for trouble." Albeit Steve probably would say it in a much nicer, more polite way. They're heroes for people, the inspiration for those that look up to them. What better way to boost morale than have kids look up to someone that powerful? No matter what side you're on, having these icons is a very coy marketing tool. Just ask Steve. He knows all about high school infomercials and meet and greets. He did do it for long enough. We've already established that these guys were birthed from government regimes. In essence, this made them the property of their respective leaders. That's not to say that they didn't exercise their own free will at certain points, though. When Cap was asked to sign the Accords in the MCU, he stood up and walked America's butt straight out of the room. He chose to make a stand for what he thought was right. He might be a soldier through and through, but he's not about to mindlessly follow orders. In the comics, there are several more examples of this too, so it's not strictly an MCU thing. Red Guardian shares much of the same qualities, although not quite to that extent. When he saves Natasha from being killed and takes the shot himself, he also saved Captain America. This was definitely going against orders, in order to save the person he once held so dear. If it was up to the Soviet Union, they would have had Red Guardian get rid of the Avengers in a heartbeat. But he didn't. In comic books, it isn't uncommon for there to be several people that hold the same superhero title. In the MCU, Cap hands his mantle down to Falcon, but Bucky also held the title. The same can be said for Red Guardian. This version we're going to meet in Black Widow is Alexei, but he wasn't the first one. Alexei Lebedev was the first to wear the rogue getup back in the 40s. Dr. Tanya Belinsky, Josef Petkus, Krasno Granitsky, and more have also been known as Red Guardian since. It just goes to show that while one person might hold the title for a certain amount of time, they aren't always going to be around forever. After all, symbols are still important, no matter who is at the helm. We all know that Steve Rogers has a moral code stronger than any other Avenger. All our heroes tend to fight the good fight, but not everyone is as rigid as Cap. If he has the slightest feeling that something's wrong, then he won't do it. He's not opposed to digging his heels in and going against the grain. Red Guardian is quite surprising in this regard. He was trained by the KGB to be a ruthless fighting machine, so it goes without saying that he's a little bit meaner than Rogers. However, it didn't stop him from saving Cap's life in one comic book story arc. In one scenario, Cap is on the ropes during a battle with Red Guardian when his ally Colonel Ling steps in. Ling knocks Rogers unconscious, but Red Guardian stops it from going any further as he doesn't believe it's right. He could have easily have finished the job and rid Russia of its enemy number one, but he didn't. Instead, he stood up for what he thought was right and stopped Ling from finishing Rogers for good. If that isn't having a moral code, then what is? What's that old saying? Imitation is the best form of flattery? Well, these guys should get it tattooed. When the Soviet Union thought Red was done for good, they didn't waste any time. They made an android version of him, which apparently isn't that uncommon. Captain America also got the same treatment on more than one occasion. Dr. Bong created a replica of Rogers, setting him loose to commit all sorts of crimes. Then Dr. Zola made his very own version with a mixture of DNA from 3 characters. Clearly, they're important enough to the Marvel Universe to be utilized in several storylines, making them key characters whether they're the real version of themselves or not. Now, will the real Captain America please stand up? Okay, that only works for Eminem, huh? Well, there you have it. What do you think? Are these 2 twins separated at birth or what? Let us know in the comments section. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any Prime Marvel content from us in the future. Until next time, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.